Is this thing on? It's me. Guess what? We're live in Ottawa. Brian, John Dow's here.
And a pretzel.
Hoo-ah. We just literally got off a plane and got a taxi, got a liquor store, we got a pretzel.
We don't have a liquor store, we went to one.
Well, we went to one. And Frick and I had a quick shave and kaboom, put a shirt on and we're here.
I dig the name of the beer store. I like it. Like
What's
back
it
home,
called?
it's called the beer store.
Really?
Yeah.
That's original.
See, back home it would be like some foo-foo thing, or like Granola and Sons fucking Hops Ale Center, or something like that. Here, it's the beer store. It's like this. Where you want to buy this? The pretzel store. That'd be great if they had a pretzel store. Do they? Where'd you get these?
At the convenience store around the corner.
Okay, well, see, it's aptly named.
But they have good pretzels.
We have a roadie today. We actually have like some staff. It's none other than Mike Blais. He's here. He's not on the show, but he's here.
He's in the flesh.
He's just the fly on the wall today. He's you know what? He actually lives up in these hotels in Ottawa. He just kind of lurks around, and he's got a little glass. You'd like show up at a hotel, go up a floor, and kaboom, he'll be there up at someone's door, and he'd be like, "Just keep going." Shh. Shh.
Giving away trade secrets.
All right.
Does anyone know the answer to do dogs like pretzels? They do.
Or, do they like the big salty chunks?
Here, hold that for me.
What am I doing with this?
Huh? Huh?
No one can see
There you
you.
go. Okay, we'll do it again. We'll do it over here.
Come on, dog, perform. This is supposed to be a show in entertainment. Oh, she's not coming.
Oh. Out here.
All right. Pretzel.
There you go. They're good.
Should we like get serious?
We could totally do that. Okay, so where we're going to go today, we're going to go right over here. So what I've learned over time, is I know some stuff about some issues. I know a little bit about of issues. And then there's some stuff I just don't know a lot about.
So salty.
It is very salty. I know about salt. But when you don't know, you got to find someone that does. And we've done that. And one of the things I don't know a lot about, one topic's MEFLOQUINE.
Mm-hmm.
Another topic, the airborne. Now I get it. I get what it did. But I was never a part of it. I don't have an association to it any deeper than that. And so, well, let's bring a guy here that does. And I'm very interested in what's going on in other countries. I'll give you an example.
On MEFLOQUINE.
Yeah. It's a good example. A buddy of mine brought this up the other day. When you know something sucks and it's a bad idea, and you know the government knows, that's one thing. But when you watch them still do that same mistake for 20, 30 years, it's painful. And that's basically my perspective when I'm sitting back looking at this thing. Like for us in Afghanistan, it was leaving water bottles on the tarmac, which was making guys sick because they were getting the BPA that's in the Indian water bottles. And I brought that up, and I found out through a guy from the Gulf War that was actually known to be a problem in 1990. And yet we're still doing it today.
They will do stuff till they get caught.
And so here we are, and that's going to be one of the topics of today's show. Not only what are we doing wrong, but what are we still doing today? And does someone else know any better?
What's down the road? The burn pits.
Yeah.
Something like that. And who knows what else.
So take it away.
Welcome, my brother.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
We've been talking for a couple of months now, and that's the way it is. You go years with advocacy, and like it was 2 years before I met this gentleman over there, and dozens of advocates. A lot of them, probably 90% of them, I still haven't met.
Yeah.
So as
And
far as
I've been waiting for somebody for years to finally be the quarterback on the MEFLOQUINE file, because I've just seen the periodical, the odd news story, some clip, a little soundbite, and I knew it's going to come sooner or later, because we've heard that there are doctors down in the USA starting to look at it.
Right.
It's just slow, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I'm not actually the first to quarterback this.
Give the guys an intro.
Hi, I'm John Dowe.
There we go.
I'm the main lead now today in Canada as part of an international effort to get an outreach for people to understand what's going on in the world with MEFLOQUINE and how it affects their lives. I began a couple of years ago to formulate this group with others around the world to make some sort of a cohesive alliance so that people could come to us so that we could give information and help them in their advocacy.
So what's
So tell us about John Dow.
Well,
give us a
there
little
okay,
background,
so
okay?
I-
Who, what, when, where, why?
Right. So, myself, I joined the military in 1990. 1992, I went to Somalia until June 1993. Served for another 7 years. Got out in 2000 of the military. I was misdiagnosed and released in 2000. After that, I went and taught in Asia for a few years and then reestablished myself in Mississauga.
Okay, that's not bad.
There you
So
go.
in 1990 you joined up and you had ambitions to be a super soldier and airborne guy?
Well, no more or no less than any other
Yeah.
young fella at the time wanting to prove himself, of course.
and you did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right out of the gate.
yeah, it was quick. I guess.
What did you guys know about Somalia getting ready to head out there?
Well, the whole lead up to the mission in Somalia was quite a lot of snafus occurred, a lot of problems with exactly what our mandate would be. We went different chapter 6 to chapter 7. It was UN mission, then it was peacemaking mission.
That's mine.
Certain training aspects that we were doing for pre-deployment wouldn't fit the bill for what we may be getting into.
Was there budgetary
there's all-
constraints and multiple missions going on causing an added
Well,
bit
it
of
was-
strain on the
No,
unit?
it was merely us getting a very clearly defined role as to what
What
the
are we doing?
expectations were of us, what our role was going to be there. Because I had changed, like I said, a couple of times.
Right.
Right? Our mission mandate had changed
How
several
old
times.
were you then?
I was 22.
Were you guys ever stop dropped? Like, was the mission ever off and then back on?
Well,
and
you
any
know,
of that?
originally we had to go, we were told to the Western Sahara. I believe that
Right.
was can't remember, but that's where we were supposed to go originally. Then
Okay.
that got kiboshed. Then we were told, okay, it's going to be Somalia.
Because there was a whole lot of juggle back then. In that time frame as well, you had guys launching up, ready to go for Croatia, and then Croatia got stood down. So most of my experience comes from the reserves, and that was the big thing. Was we had all these guys ready to go there, and then binned. 2 weeks later, the government changes its mind. We're back to Yugoslavia, and back and forth. So in that brick of time, there was a lot of missions that are you're on the bus, off the bus, snowshoes on, snowshoes off. And my understanding was that happened with the airborne a bit.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So there was much of that. In short, we dealt with much of that, but we bashed on and proceeded with the mission.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
So when you first, that was 92 or 93?
1992, first
And
boots on the ground
so
was in December.
When did
Early
you first
December.
hear about MEFLOQUINE?
Well,
From the older guys? Had you used it before?
no, we hadn't heard about this drug.
You hadn't,
the place
CF
where,
hadn't used it before?
well, let me
I'll
place
shut
where
up.
MEFLOQUINE fits into the picture here.
Yep. Do it.
So, as part of that mission that I just spoke of in Somalia, the Canadian forces had received the drug MEFLOQUINE, but it was under the understanding that it would be part of a safety monitoring study. So it was handed over to the military, but with the clear understanding that there would be monitoring, there would be questionnaires, and a safe, dispensation of the drug with proper screening and such. That's all part of the directives of Health Canada.
Mm-hmm.
That never happened.
Okay.
The drug was unlicensed at the time. It wasn't licensed yet for Canada, so we were part of a drug trial in essence.
And it first started in Vietnam, MEFLOQUINE?
Well, mid-70s, chloroquine resistance demanded a new drug. And MEFLOQUINE, although it hadn't been properly synthesized or
For malaria.
For malaria. There
In
was
case people don't know.
chloroquine resistance in the area, so they went with MEFLOQUINE. But MEFLOQUINE hadn't done all the phase testing, all right, to develop the proper characteristics of the drug
Right.
and to understand the full adverse effects, side effects that the drug can present.
Right.
And plus, at the time, really there was no proper monitoring or reporting of the adverse effects of the drug because it's in a military setting.
Can you
right?
give us a
So it's just
layman's
mashed up.
version of what the drug does? It's like a toxin that you build up in your brain to a degree, isn't it?
Well, MEFLOQUINE, see, what we're talking about is, let's unpack this. So with MEFLOQUINE, it's along the same quinoline family of drugs.
Right.
Quinoline is actually a psychotropic. And it's known to have very serious neurological effects on the brain. That's been proven. And quinolines is where mefloquine is synthesized from.
Okay.
So what happens is it goes through the body, but has a long half-life. So it takes a long time for the body in processing, and it can build up into the limbic system, temporally, regionally in the brain, and can affect you neurologically.
And that's
It
right where
passes
the spine connects to the brain, right in that area?
Well, yeah, it's in the limbic region overall. It passes the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I don't want to get too deep into the science because I'm not a scientist here.
Okay.
But essentially, it
layman's
works on a
term, just so that these
it
folks
works on a
understand
neurological
it.
level.
We
So-
need to make sure someone who hasn't heard of it before, and that a lot of veterans haven't really gotten into the meat of it until they've started to have an issue with it.
Think of a metals toxicity. Like think about
Heavy metals.
yeah, like a lead poisoning, mercury,
Okay.
something like that, where you have a toxic buildup in the brain.
Yeah.
In, that,
Okay.
in the brainstem area.
So-
and then it causes lesions, microscopic lesions, and prevents the synapses from firing.
Okay.
You know.
So if we look at the intent of what they were trying to do, though, let's try for a second to take the government's point of view on this one. Malaria sucks. Malaria can kill. Malaria is one of the things, still to this day, one of the leading causes of death in the world. And so I think, for me, from a layman's point of view, I can respect the want to handle that. We had a guy from my unit went to Sierra Leone. He almost died of malaria, right? So he wound up in a hospital in Freetown for ages. And maybe it's great down there, maybe it's top-notch healthcare, but I'm gonna guess that I would probably not want to be laid up for a month in a bed in fucking Freetown or Bella Twin, where you guys were, or wherever. So I kind of give them a pass that they wanted to solve it, but that's about all I kind of give them a pass for.
I see.
Because when we wound up in Afghanistan, we could see that the government was still playing hockey with it. They told us when we were in Kabul, for example, oh, don't worry, there's no mosquitoes here. And we're in the bathroom just swatting them all bloody day. Because they wouldn't give it to us, but they were giving it to guys elsewhere. So the government is still doing a dance on this file.
It was
Right.
weird in 2006 that not everybody on our tour was given the same drug. It was like they were using up the last bit of a case lot of it. And so a portion of us got it and a portion got a newer one.
Well,
and I got mefloquine. I
Yeah.
have the docs still.
yeah, the military, like back in mid-2000s, still 90% of the military population received the drug. And there's been a steady drawback ever since then. So that was probably what you're talking about, where then other things such as maybe Malarone or doxycycline were introduced.
So somewhere they might have had like
Well-
a huge lot of it somewhere and they've just been using it up over the years?
I have no idea about
Yeah,
how they're
okay.
dispensing it or
Yeah.
what their schedule is for dispensation.
Sure.
You know, what their stock is in the formulary, no idea. But what I do know is they have steadily decreased it. But where we're standing today, and why I stand up and I, bullhorn
Yeah,
today,
we have to do that.
is the fact that we're still dispensing it at 5 times the rate of the United States.
There we go.
So we're standing at a 5% overall rate.
Like a per
In the
capita
military.
ratio?
No, 5% of the military population is
Okay.
still receiving the drug.
Thank you. Okay.
1% is in the United States, which reflects more accurately the international demand that this drug is made a drug of last resort, is removed basically from the military formulary.
Yes.
Not to be dispensed, because it cannot be properly prescribed
Okay.
without individual screening and monitoring in a quick way ad hoc when troops are quickly deployed.
So
And when they're overseas and deployed, because of the stressors and situations that they're in, they can't disseminate between whether it's PTSD or traumatic incident, or maybe it's intoxication of the drug taking effect.
Yeah.
It confounds diagnosis.
John Buckle says there are better options for anti-malarials, Doxy and Malarone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, the military still alludes to the
Hey,
fact
Johnny, good question.
that... Say? What was the question?
Well, you just
he was making a
It's not a
point about
question.
the other options that are
Right.
out
Go
there.
ahead.
And that's also what we want to trumpet, is the fact that mefloquine isn't the go-to drug or the most effective drug in regions of the world.
Yes.
Malarone and doxycycline are just as effective, right? So let's get rid of that fallacy right there.
So when it's you're deployed, you've got your meds. Tell me about the actual intake into your body. Was it monitored? Was it like a section thing? Was the medic there, or was it just here, you'll take these. Like,
Yeah,
how'd that go?
Medic came around, it was dispensed ad hoc. Some guys actually got little bottles, and on the bottle had the red tape, experimental, right? It wasn't licensed. And there was no proper informed consent of what the drug was, no list of what the side effects could be, or contraindications, or any of that. It was just, here, take this. And then when soldiers did complain, because quite a few did, those reports, which were sent out from the Preserver to Ottawa, were never properly spread out, or the alarm wasn't raised.
What kind of complaints? Like,
People temporally associated mefloquine use with what was happening with them. Insomnia, vivid dreams, hallucinations, hyperaggressions.
How many boots were on the ground in that camp?
Mm.
How many of you?
Well, there was 1,400 overall, I believe, on the tour. 900 airborne proper.
So everybody was on it.
Yes. Except airmen.
So
sorry, except
Airmen. So,
Okay,
yeah,
Roger.
pilots and such.
so no air
So,
crew,
like
but
people
ground
on the
force
Navy-
was on it.
On the Navy, they certainly took it too.
Oh, they did.
Oh, yeah.
Were they doing a lot of brownwater ops then, or
I don't know. Huh?
what the hell's the Navy taking it for if they're out there like?
Oh, no, because they would come to ground.
Oh,
Come in
okay. So they were okay.
Yeah, they were doing various things.
So-
various tasks.
And so already here, he's telling me something. I've read a bit about this. He's telling me something I didn't know. I always thought that the symptoms were ones that came out later. So you're telling me like you guys are taking this, and immediately on the ground, guys are reporting, whoa, like
Yes,
what's
so,
going on?
and that's what they were doing, is they
No,
were
Matt,
experiencing acute symptoms, right? Prodromally, with the night vivid dreams and such, and insomnia, sleepwalking, all of that. That was prodromal symptoms that discontinued the drug. So that was the warning signs, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that was their acute symptoms. And then when they went and were asked, well, what can I do about this? It was drink more water, get more sleep.
Right.
There was no option.
Sepacol.
Go for a walk.
There was no plan B, right? You know,
Yeah.
So they had to continue the drug. Now, so not only did they have the acute effects, now we're concerned with the long-term or permanent effects, because we know today, as the manufacturer of the drug has admitted, yes, it confounds a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, are bad, and the effects can be permanent in nature, and we know they can be permanent, and can develop long after you've used the drug.
Misdiagnosis with PTSD is a big issue that's not really being addressed because you have traumatic brain injury has a lot of
Yeah.
similarities.
This is a wonderful area for me to get into
MEFLOQUINE
now, too.
has
I love
similar
this area,
areas. Do you want to talk about this a
Yes,
bit?
let's
do it.
bang into that. So now,
Just you
here,
lead the way.
so here we find a situation where we have a bunch of soldiers who've come back from tour, all right, and quite a few of them did not see or do anything traumatic, yet have feelings of PTSD, and they're diagnosed with PTSD. Even though they don't have it, they have the toxidrome of mefloquine. However, they start begin treatment for PTSD. They can't meet their markers. They get falling in even further in depression,
Right.
or they're offered, you know, a cocktail of pharmaceuticals, and it
Cocktail.
only exacerbates
Yeah.
their symptoms and makes them worse. You know, rest in peace, Major General Duncan. He's a classic example of that. So
What
that's
happened
the
with,
element.
with him?
That's a case in point right there. He's-
Okay, what's his case though?
well, he
Better remember, like my mom's watching, she don't know much.
About this.
Well,
a very
yeah.
high profile example of exactly
go,
what I'm
Mom.
talking about.
Right, thanks.
When you prescribe SSRIs or pills to someone who has PTSD or really mefloquine toxidrome, you're
Yeah.
going to exacerbate those symptoms and make them even worse.
Okay.
Because the brain has it actually with the mefloquine toxidrome, an acquired brain injury. Okay, so that means the brain chemistry has been altered, isn't working correctly. So now when you're throwing other components, chemical components in
Then
there,
it really goes
you're really
south.
messing things up, right?
That's
now
why
you're really shaking that
That's
brain.
why I
up.
think I have a
Pharmaceutical.
problem, because when they gave me the pills, I, on a couple occasions, smashed up my house. Nobody was in there, no one got hurt, but it was getting bad. And
Right.
so then they
but-
said,
but
well,
hang
the
on.
drug shouldn't be doing
But
that.
now I'm going to throw a couple of big words in here, because now we also have other aspects of this PTSD problem. So the person who goes to get the treatment can't meet, like he gets more depressed. Why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? And everybody's wondering, well, geez, you didn't see trauma. No one died near you. There was no accident or explosion, what have you. Why do you have PTSD?
Right.
That's the confounding of the diagnosis of PTSD. Now, if you have someone who does have PTSD, he was in a critical incident, what have you, overseas, abroad, and he took the mefloquine, there could be a commingled effect, or what's called a comorbidity.
See, I
Right.
drove over an
So
anti-tank
you-
mine, I kept going with the tour. I was on MEFLOQUINE. I went through a whole bunch of traumatic stuff, so I got kind of a triple whammy.
You got the triple whammy, possibly, right? So,
Yeah.
and that's
Hey.
the issues. We need to disentangle.
I want to hold
all
you
of
here
these
for a
things.
second, John. We're totally go back to you.
John?
John Buckle's saying he had severe vertigo, panic attacks daily while in theater in '09. Nothing prior, and before that, everything started the first week.
I took
MEFLOQUINE.
So we want to keep track of you, John Buckle. Check in with John Dow, friend him, and he wants to be able to keep in touch with
Yeah,
everybody.
I recognize you, John.
I'm going
Thanks
to back
for-
up from there for a sec. So there you are, and the way you're looking at it now, if I could paraphrase, is you're seeing people come forward who believe they have post-traumatic stress disorder, who have symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, but when they're given post-traumatic stress disorder drug cocktails and treatments, since that's not what it is, they're obviously not going to progress with those treatments. But now they are going to develop a mental problem because they think there's something wrong with them. They're going nuts. They're not getting better. They're getting depression.
Right
So
here.
is that
It's a downward spiral. But okay,
So
let me
we've created a
classify
mental
it.
problem.
Let me classify it in three.
sure?
So here we have three things. You've got the person who's coming up to me and saying, I don't have PTSD, but I do have symptoms that are like PTSD, but I didn't go through anything traumatic.
Right.
Do I have the methylphentoxidrome? That's the first person. The second person we have is the person that says, I know I have PTSD, but I can't meet treatment markers. It's treatment resistance. I can't. It's been 8 or 9 years, and I'm still can't get a full grip and be fully functional.
Yep.
So is it MEFLOQUINE too? So is it a person? Is it both? Commingling of effects, right?
Yeah.
Comorbidity. The third is the person who says, I don't know if I have PTSD. I think I might. I did see trauma, but I was never diagnosed with PTSD. But I don't know if it's MEFLOQUINE either.
Okay.
So he has to be triaged. So there's three kind of groups, right? Does that explain it?
So
Yeah,
here's
I'm with you.
Me
I'm with you.
being Mr. Big Time Advocate,
and
you'd
with
think
none of
I'd
this
know some
happening,
stuff.
With none of this, sorry,
Okay.
interrupt, with none of this happening, with none of this a push or outreach to get people in to have them neurologically assessed to determine the symptoms and to pick it apart and figure out what's what, then we can't establish a proper treatment plan for that person. It's mistreatment, misdiagnosis and such.
Yeah.
And it's just a huge collapse of the way things are supposed to be working.
So are we in a situation where nobody can get diagnosed because our government or the mental health or medical community don't want to acknowledge that there was an issue all along with the thing, so there's no diagnosis? Is there any ability for diagnosis?
Well, this is why I'm here in Ottawa today. I know you guys are coming to Toronto
Yes, we
in the
are.
next couple
We
of
are.
days, and we could have done the show then.
Well, it's
I'm not
Tuesday.
waiting. I'm not waiting a couple of more days. That's why I'm so urgent. I
He
drove up
drove
here
all the way up, got a room, and
because
here we are.
the point here is unlike the United Kingdom, unlike Australia, unlike the United States, where there's proactivity on this, where Veterans Affairs are looking and calling out those members and saying, come in, let's check you, let's see if you're doing okay, let's see if you have the symptoms, let's try to triage you. We have the United Kingdom's Defence Select Committee saying, yeah, we need to stop giving this to our troops completely. We have Australia moving strongly in the same direction, and yet I can't get any traction in Canada with anybody who's
So which
responsible.
country started moving first?
Oh, I believe it's the United States with the great work with Dr. Remington Nevin,
And it
who
started
was successful
when-
in getting the FDA to put the black box warning, the strongest warning on the drug method.
So they publicly announced 1.5 years, 2 years ago that they said all their special forces were no longer going to take the drug. And was that the first point where, okay, they're finally making a statement?
Yeah.
Well, it's just,
Was
no,
that-
it's just specifically with special forces in that they get deployed so quickly.
Right.
Right? So they're the greatest risk of not being prescribed the drug properly. So
Okay,
that's why
yeah.
that went out. And then a general
Good to
drawback of the drug with everybody else as well.
And-
Now the thing is, Canada, we don't even have the same labels as the United States reflecting all the accurate side effects that could possibly happen to someone. So troops are still getting this not properly informed.
So, and as you said that, what's coming to my mind right now is not only the SOF aspect, the Special Ops Force aspect, but take last year, we sent people on the drop of a dime to go fight Ebola. And I'm sure they had a whole cocktail of stuff then, but 2 weeks before that, did they know they were going? The DART team. Someone gets an earthquake or a mudslide that wipes out a village, we send the DART, but there's no warning about that.
You're supposed to take MEFLOQUINE for a certain period of time
Right.
prior to deployment, even to get the buildup in your system. So if you're taking it right away and jumping on the plane, you are not covered, buddy. So you're still going to get malaria and be exposed to what could
And the
possibly be a
toxicity.
neurotoxicity of the drug.
So one other thing that he mentioned that I want to hone in on here for a second is, as he was talking a little earlier about how it could mimic post-traumatic stress disorder, I have a couple of scenarios out there, very good friends of mine, who the reason they wound up in the state they're in was they were being treated for post-traumatic stress disorder and most likely had it, but they were then declared to be resistant to therapy.
Yeah.
What really came across with that, though, is he's being an asshole resistant. Like, not his body is resisting the therapy, but you yourself are making attempts and action to not absorb the therapy.
Yeah.
And it just, it's in the back of my mind, as I'm hearing that, maybe there was no chance
Well,
with that therapy.
the reason
because
why I'm
maybe it was a
also-
toxicity
Well,
thing.
yeah, but what's also important here, guys, is that, you know, what they call somatoform or malingering, those sort of psychosomatic effects where we believe that it's the patient, you know, it's the old, or the drunken druggy line, it's more him, you know, resisting to the treatment as opposed to him not putting the work forward himself.
Right.
This has been debunked long ago because of the situation that you have soldiers typically who don't speak out about their symptoms. It doesn't mean they don't have them. It's just part of that culture.
Right.
So then they suffer in confusion and silence. And since we don't have an outreach from MEFLOQUINE, this is going to continue. And look at their high suicide rate. And this is where the whole, look at how high our suicide rate is.
So
Do you have a MEFLOQUINE group
Oh.
on Facebook where we have a collection point to start collecting the people?
Well, I've been utilizing my Facebook page, plus the International MEFLOQUINE Veterans Alliance website, Twitter accounts and such for everyone to go there.
And what is that called?
Which
What's your
How can people find it? If
How do
wanna
they
it?
find John Dow?
No, Facebook John Dowe, and I will accept.
Spell
it.
last name?
John DOWE.
All right.
There it is. It's
Now,
important. We need to get a little organized on this because we're living in a system in Canada where nothing changes until we get mad or start, hey, this is bad, and we have to have a big movement to get some traction.
so I asked you earlier about the symptoms that we're seeing, but more on a task force perspective. What happened to you when you took the pills? Did you notice? Something immediately, or while you were
Well,
deployed?
yeah, I had the prodromal symptoms. Like I had the insomnia, dissociation. I had the vivid dreams. I had all of that.
During tour?
I was yeah,
Yeah.
of course, during the whole damn tour.
Yeah.
I took 46 doses because I was one of the first there and one of the last to leave.
Okay.
And then I took it 4 weeks after as well. So I was on a lot of it. But the point here is because of what went down in Somalia, the trial, the drug trial was basically completely blown out of the water for being negligent, and that was proven in the 1999 Auditor General's report
Okay.
on that whole drug trial issue. So you can look up the Auditor General's report, 1999 Somalia, and there was a declaration of just what sort of malfeasance went on there. But because of this, the drug is now licensed in
That was cool. That was totally cool. That was Barry Westholm phoning in. Hey Barry, we'll get to you in a bit. Sorry.
we're busy.
Oh yeah, just bash on, mate.
So, because this drug sort of passed easy peasy through our trial, because we, the symptoms weren't properly reported to the healthcare system, it went on to be dispensed to 32 million people.
Can you send
So now we
a
have a bunch of
Facebook message
civilians
to Barry Westholm?
also
Do you
being
have it?
prescribed the drug,
Just tell him to
who
phone us
aren't
later.
getting proper
Because he's trying to phone
consent.
during this.
Because of how unethical and improper our drug trial was done. So it affects civilians, not just the military anymore. We're talking about a huge population here, people overall.
And so this was, it's a bad reference, but I bring back my water bottle story. Is there I am in 2011, and we're drinking these bottles that been sitting out in 45-degree heat. They taste like plastic. We know they're bad. And then you get to a place where you talk to other advocates and they're like, holy crap, that happened? We knew about that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, Sasha, it's okay. And so here we are in that same scenario with that, and I have to wonder, you put these things into your body, you experience symptoms, and you've made a link, and then you watch for decades, essentially, as the government still keeps doing that. how does that feel? Knowing that the 20-year-olds when you're 35 are going through what you went through when you're 20 and it's fixable.
Well, I mean, it causes you great grief, right? You don't like to see that. You want to see progressive action, you know, in how we treat our soldiers going in throughout their service. You don't want to see them exposed to field exposures such as this that could play out. You want to get the word out and advise people about what's been going on today. You want to change policy
Is there
for their betterment, of course.
is there a lawsuit in this?
You know-
is there the potential?
There are law firms that are like, you know, asking questions.
Right.
However, we need to get all our ducks in a row first, and what we need to do primarily is what we're doing here today, and getting the word out for public sentiment. To
Right.
get the politicians to first get off their feet and move with this, because none of them want to touch this. They don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
It's been kicked down the road so long. You know, it's possibly like Dr. Nevins stated, pending litigation. You know, it's that there's that fear that they're going to see culpability should they discontinue the drug outright,
Right.
Or, you know, just quickly policy.
Any
So,
action could
you know,
look like
it's kind of
intent.
right.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's such a political hot potato. Therein lies, you know, the problem. It's just
Okay.
bash down that wall to get this going. But again, what helps us is the fact that internationally so much action is taking place. So really, for this government to not do anything, and I've given Kent Hare the file from day one.
Yes.
All the all the people that are should be in the know are in the know, because I've made contact with them all. I get nothing back. That tells me they just do not want to approach us whatsoever.
Did you
Well-
guys ever jump in Somalia?
Yeah, we had jumps, but that was to maintain the current
keep
jump,
the
right?
quals
To keep your-
going, okay.
Yeah, you
I don't
keep
know why
your
that just
skills
came
up,
to me.
right? You have
Okay.
to. You got to be aware of, like, you know, where you're working, right? So you want to get a jump in to know. But
Okay,
but
so-
no, I went in by Herc.
So you were just saying though about getting organized and awareness. So who are you talking to on an international level?
Well, that's a nice little segue into the next part here. If we can get
Yes.
our guest in soon.
We will.
Yeah,
But
Stuart
lay
McCarthy.
some groundwork. Well, just I want to hear about the UK and the States and Australia though.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
So now, the United Kingdom had their problems as well with the drug and caused great harm. Also, Australia and the other nations that were dispensed the drug. And so there's been this groundswell of movement. However, it's been so loose, and so we've had to tighten down the network and come as an actual alliance. And so again, in Australia, they had bad user experiences, the soldiers did, and went through an unethical drug trial with in East Timor and Bougainville, I believe it was 2002, and they had MEFLOQUINE and also tafenoquine, which is another quinoline-based drug, which was deemed even more toxic than malaria, or the MEFLOQUINE, and it has its issues with what went down on there. But this is where we lead into Stuart McCarthy, because he's the expert in that area and what he has done so far, and
And
where
where's
he's
he
pushed
from?
Australia.
Australia.
Yes, he's a serving member of the Australian Defence Force.
Still serving.
Yes.
Do you think we could talk to him?
Well, we're going to try to get him on the phone.
Awesome.
Smashing.
So he's still serving,
Yes, he is.
and he's cool he's allowed.
Yeah, I believe so.
The boss said, "Okay, we'll give you 5 minutes."
Why are you putting on your shades? Oh, your
I needed
glasses.
to read.
Okay, I thought you
needed
just.
to read, but I was
I thought you needed to be cooler to
Small
talk to an
button.
Aussie or
He's
something.
airborne. He's old. Martin Manan. Didn't he used to work in Aaron O'Toole's office? Martin, I remember you. Oh, dear. Hey, everyone out there, can you give me a thumbs up? Come on.
Smashing.
Come on, give me a thumbs up.
If there was a middle
Give me a
finger
thumbs
button,
up.
we'd get more of
Okay,
that.
so he should be called in any minute. Okay, guys? Any
So-
minute.
The
Maybe
show
we'll
is
change
excellent.
seats, put you here, and then
Yeah.
get that so you can put that on
we were
speaker.
gonna do that speaker thing. Too late.
Too late.
We can just sit it right up here.
Yep, get it as close to
So
the
hang
ground
on, let
as
me
possible.
get him to
Okay.
first.
See how Brian did that? He stole a good seat.
Equitas shirt, just putting it out there. Everyone needs one.
Mike, the light! The
light!
I just
Go
want to
to the
say,
light!
I just need to say, this is the quietest, longest and quietest period of time Mike Blay
No, I got
has
this.
ever been.
I got this.
Ever.
Covered. I got this covered for you, Mike. Don't worry about it. The solution has to be comprehensive. It has to be a comprehensive solution.
There must be equality and recognition of national sacrifice.
There.
That, well,
I
hey,
had to.
somebody had to say it, Mike.
All right, so let's be quiet.
Don't call
That'd
him.
be good, buddy.
So
I've cut myself out of the show.
while he's making, oh,
Talk about my
Hey,
foot.
we're ringing.
Is that all the way up?
Hello, Stuart.
Yeah, that's John.
Yeah, it's me. Go ahead.
Is that as loud as it goes?
put it right beside it.
Yeah, I got it at the max.
Okay. Can you speak up a bit, brother? Right up to the mic.
Yeah, how's that? Is that better?
I'll just check with the viewers. Can you say hello?
Hello? Testing, testing.
Can everybody hear him all right? Somebody please say something. Hello? Can you hear him? Okay. So nobody... Yep, someone can hear him.
Good,
There,
good.
somebody spoke up. Good job.
Here, I'll hold that for you. Okay?
So you're going to talk to him.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So, where are we talking to you from?
I'm in Ipswich, Queensland.
Thanks for taking the time, and we're just going to hand the floor over to John because John knows the file better than we do. John.
Who is that? You, Aaron?
Hi, Stuart. How are you?
Can you hear us?
There's a long delay.
I guess there's a long delay. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, there's probably a bit of a delay.
Just, Stuart, if you can, could you give us a rundown on your efforts in Australia to get some action on the MEFLOQUINE file and how we want to remove it from the formulary for the military?
And speak loud, brother.
Sure, are we live now? Or
Yeah, we're live. You just need to speak a little louder.
We're all yelling.
Sure.
Ah,
Okay. Well, in Australia, we've had quite a good amount of progress in the last year or so. We had a Senate inquiry into mental health in the Australian Defence Force last year, and myself and Dr. Jane Quinn, who's originally from the UK, we both appeared to that inquiry, spoke specifically about the impact of MEFLOQUINE on the Defence Force community and also on veterans, and we had some pretty good findings and recommendations come out of that inquiry, which I can talk about later on if we have time. And more recently, earlier this year, we had a forum in Townsville, which is one of the larger military towns in Australia, and also we host a number of, we've got quite a large veterans community. And the forum that we had there was specifically on the impact of MEFLOQUINE. There's another similar drug called Defenoquine, which has been used in Australia as well. But we spoke about both of those drugs and the health impacts on veterans. That was attended by a number of veterans, a number of health professionals. We had the Surgeon General of the Australian Defence Force attended that forum, as well as Dr. Quinn, and also Dr. Remington Nevin from the States joined in by Skype. We had some good dialogue there, and my understanding is that was possibly a world first, where we had military officials as well as the veterans community come together and talk about MEFLOQUINE. So those are, I guess, a couple of highlights in the last 12 months, and as seems to be happening in Canada at the moment, the veterans community getting fairly well organised here in Australia as far as raising awareness of the health impacts of MEFLOQUINE, and also trying to get some more concerted action from both the Department of Defence and also the Department of Veterans Affairs, as well as other veterans organisations.
Sir, if I could ask you as well, for the Canadian experience, we're largely speaking of Somalia, Rwanda, Afghanistan, Sierra Leone. What is the Australian experience? What are the major deployments for the Aussie forces where this drug was utilized, sir?
Yeah, that's a good question. In one sense, the Australian experience is quite different, but there is also a bit of a parallel which I'll come to. Mefloquine has never been used as the first choice of antimalarials. Ever since mefloquine was introduced in Australia, the first line antimalarial drug is doxycycline. So initially when mefloquine was introduced in the early 90s, it was the second line drug, and later on it became the third line drug after Melarone. So it's never been the first line drug. So the numbers are probably not as large as they are in Canada. But this is where there is a little bit of a parallel with the Canadian experience, in that the large percentage of the Australian military people given mefloquine were given the drug during a series of drug trials during the late 90s and early 2000s in East Timor, from around about 99 to 2001, and one or two other smaller operations. So the much of the focus that's happening in Australia is about the participation of those personnel in those drug trials, and whether or not they were given the proper information to give their informed consent, and then the follow-up medical care that goes on from that. So that's where there's quite a close parallel to what happened in Somalia with the Canadian troops deployed on that mission, which I found interesting because I was aware of what's now called the Somalia Affair. That happened fairly early in my military career, and it gained a lot of attention over here. And it was only quite recently that I understood that the unit, the Canadian unit involved in that, was actually participating in a drug trial. And so a lot of the incidents I think you may have spoken about with John are linked to the use of that drug on that drug trial.
So if I could ask you one more here, and then I'll pass back to John. I just want to make sure that people realize we're talking about the same thing. So when we have a medication in one part of the world versus the other, we don't want people to get to the opinion of, well, it was the part of the world that caused the symptoms. And we want to make sure people are aware that it is the drug that caused the symptoms, or at least that's the belief right now. So do you mind for me telling me what you think the top 3 or the top 5 symptoms of mefloquine are, as you've experienced it in the Australian forces?
Yeah, certainly. So before I talk about the symptoms, just to make your listeners understand that we're definitely talking about the same drug. Mefloquine was introduced by various national drug regulators, or was approved for market by various national drug regulators in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and it was very widely used then. It was very widely used by civilian travellers and also a number of militaries. There are some military forces that didn't use it, but it was very, very commonly used during that period, beginning in the late 1980s and through the 1990s. So we're certainly talking about the same drug, and one of the things that is distinct, if you're not certain of the name of the drug that you might have been given, is that mefloquine is a once per week tablet, which is different to most other antimalarial medications. So if you're not certain, that's one thing that might remind you that you're taking mefloquine rather than another drug. So what was the actual question again, just to get you back on?
Yeah, if you could, what would you say are the top five symptoms?
Yeah, so a lot of the very common symptoms that can be linked to mefloquine, and we're talking about chronic symptoms here. So these are things that can last a long period of time, and these are symptoms that have even been acknowledged by, for example, the US Food and Drug Administration. So they're a combination of both psychiatric symptoms and neurological symptoms. So the more common psychiatric symptoms are depression and anxiety, and then a set of symptoms which are very often misdiagnosed as PTSD. So things like nightmares, for example. So those are the more common psychiatric ones, and then neurological symptoms, which are quite common with MEFLOQUINE, are things like tinnitus or ringing in the ears, and in some cases some central neural hearing loss or high frequency hearing loss, and some other common ones are things like vertigo, the sense of movement, and dizziness. So MEFLOQUINE is a drug that can affect your vestibular system, which is the part of your brain that affects balance, and hearing. So those are some of the more common neurological symptoms. So that set of symptoms that I described then, for those people who are affected by MEFLOQUINE, are very, very common.
Okay, one other thing I was wondering with this, the symptoms of MEFLOQUINE toxicity are very bad, very negative, and yet so is malaria. And for you, you have soldiers under your command. If they're about to be sent to a place where a malaria threat is there, in your mind, are there other options? Are there better options that should be utilized?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. Malaria is a serious disease. There's no question that people should be taking the right precautions. To answer your question, certainly yes. Right through the history of the use of MEFLOQUINE, there have always been safer alternative drugs. One of the reasons that military authorities have preferred to use MEFLOQUINE is that they believe that giving soldiers a once weekly drug will make them more likely to comply with actually taking the drug. That's debatable as to how true that actually is, but that's a topic for another day. A couple of the alternative drugs, much safer drugs than MEFLOQUINE, I've already mentioned. One of them is doxycycline, and another one is a drug called Arone. And then there have been some other drugs that have been trialled, and I guess when we're talking about antimalarial drugs, there are some drugs that the malaria parasite has become resistant to, and in fact that was one of the reasons that MEFLOQUINE was introduced. So
when I was talking about the
if you are travelling to a malarious area, you certainly do need to see a doctor and check that the drug that you're going to be given is effective in the area that you're travelling to. But to answer your question, absolutely yes, there have always been safer alternative drugs to MEFLOQUINE.
Okay, great. So I just want to thank you before I hand it back to John. The work you're doing is going to help people in not just your country, but around the world, particularly mine. So thank you for your efforts, and back to John.
Yes, thanks a lot for that, Stuart. I'd like to thank you for being such a clear leader on this file and really helping me establish what we're doing here in Canada. As you guys have demonstrated with a great template of action and proactivity, where the peak organization of the veterans groups supports your efforts and agrees with your findings, and we have the same sort of action in the United Kingdom, why are we getting no traction here in Canada? So I'm so thankful that you took time out today and spoke with us and helped us to educate.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Thank you, Stu.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right.
All right, let's get back to our
I'm going to hijack.
previous configuration.
Hijack.
It's so we're
Hijack.
So Wayne's World.
Okay, so we have a situation here. Like, we have veteran organizations in Canada, don't we? Like, why isn't anyone doing anything or saying anything?
Well, because
it's been being mentioned for the last 5-10 years, hasn't it? That this is an issue.
Think about how big this is. First off, it's political, because when you start to get into how to correct this, you know, you start to get into, well, who did the miscorrection in the first place?
Acknowledging fault.
Yeah, so there's an acknowledgement factor here that's huge. This involves both main political parties, everybody's hands in it. It's going to be pricey, it's going to take a lot of work, and you know, they just best to kick it down the road. The successive government wants to kick it down the road. I did some work with the
Well,
conservative
we're all
government
trained not to tell on
prior, so-
ourselves, right? Like, until we call it out and say, this is a problem and now let's deal with it,
Well, and it's not
nothing's
just-
going to happen.
And to be fair, it's
And-
not just a liberal government. It's
No,
also
it's all government.
I already let the conservative government know prior to this liberal government. It was the same sort of stonewall. So,
Right.
you know, here
It's,
we are. We got to get the public on board. And
Tactics
understand
that
it.
have been probably being used on anyone trying to rally for assistance for decades.
Mm.
Or a century, for
Absolutely.
that matter. If it wasn't for social media, we wouldn't be getting organized on these files. We wouldn't have had something happen like what happened with that election last year.
Absolutely.
How often do veterans influence an election in any country? I don't know. Not
So-
here. It's not normal. So the Legion, the Anavets, the big ones, they
Oh,
they
quick
have,
shout
have
out!
they,
Quick shout out to Craig Hood and to Brad White.
Oh,
They
okay.
acknowledge what I'm doing on
they have.
Twitter. Yeah, they,
Okay, good.
they've acknowledged they would
That's
like
what
to
I'm alluding
support.
to.
Thank you very much for that. So shout out to Brad White and Craig Hood from the Legion. Thank you guys.
We all need to be supporting these issues. If there's enough people out there saying, hey, this is an issue, the organizations do have to do something. And if they have their hands full with things, they need to turn to us young troops that are starting to learn how to use this technology to help.
Get the word out.
We want to all work together.
So with this, I'm going to change tracks a little bit here. I know what happened to your old unit was a kick in the pills to not only the guys serving right across the forces.
Ever served.
Right.
Does it still hurt now? Like,
Oh,
do you
yes.
still have lingering resentment for how they skewered your unit for an event?
Well, yeah, see, this is where we get into the whole treatment of the Airborne Regiment, how it was disbanded in a knee-jerk political way. You had troops that were, you know, toxified by this drug, not being properly cared for at the time, and, you know, we've had these horrific events that went down. The Airborne gets to be the scapegoat, disband the Airborne, see you later, guys, and it was absolutely ridiculous.
So keep the
To
drug,
a
get rid of
man-
the Airborne.
To a man, no, it was that's overly reductionist. But
Yeah.
But what I mean is, to a man, anybody you speak to that's served, this is very, very fresh. Well, it's never healed. It never will until we get the proper attention to all the causal factors at play, which we didn't because the Somalia inquiry got shut down. So we were denied our day in court, really, where we have psychiatrists like Dr. Passy willing to testify and going to testify about the MEFLOQUINE issues that may have occurred because of what happened in the airborne tour in Somalia, and he gets shut down a week before he gets to testify. So we didn't even get our word out to begin with, and the opprobrium over the years that is attached to this whole Somalia affair needs to be relooked at in a proper way.
Right.
Yeah.
In a mature way. Because
Yeah.
there are people that are sick.
With the new evidence,
I
of
could
the
have the
drug,
symptoms myself.
yeah, there you are.
I have all the symptoms, but there is no diagnosis, so
Yeah.
I have PTSD. Do I?
So with that, how connected do you find the guys from that unit are? Like, are you?
Oh,
could you pick up a
hyper-tight.
phone and?
Oh, hyper tight. See, over the last, that's what I've been doing in an outreach as part of what my Canadian role here, was to get a hold of veterans. And when I began the MEFLOQUINE thing, I had 2 years ago, maybe 20 people on my Facebook, and now it's 620, and 99% of that's military. So I've really, over the last couple of years, built up the followers, and then on Twitter, then on the websites. And to a man, everybody's interested, everybody's watching, and they would really like to see what's going to happen next. But as I also keep explaining, for your part, I provide the form letter on my Facebook, John Dow, Facebook, you can bring to your MP to simply sign it, bring it to your MP. It's a form letter which states, we'd like action on this in Parliament, please. We want to get to the bottom of it based on new evidence and what other countries are currently doing.
See,
We'll get that linked onto our page.
there was something that I noticed happened in the forces after the disbandment, and I was never part of it. I never got a jump course, although I wanted one. But what I did notice was when they got rid of his unit, something else went with it and was equally as bad to lose. And that was the idea of striving for something better. So what happened to us was when the jump courses went away, because that was a really big reward for a strong soldier, the idea of us and them, but not knocking someone else, but exalting these guys that are doing really well. Like, not saying these guys are not performing, but these are the guys that are performing the best. And we should recognize that, and we should make them do hard things because they're hard men.
A lot of people
and
like
we
to
threw
run.
that out too.
A lot of people like to run. Not everybody wants to go to the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
There's a place for everyone. But for those who, you know, just
But
really
some
push
do.
themselves
Yeah.
to the nth degree, that's what the airborne was for them, was to get to that extra special spot.
And
right?
so when that
It
went
was
away,
awesome being fit, eh? Are you fit now?
No, I'm beating back Father Time like anybody else.
Yeah.
but when that went away, along with it went that idea of having something bigger to go for. And so right across the Army, the only things you could really aspire to was a leadership course, a driver course, or like, and
Well, there was a vacuum for a
Yes.
while until we got
There was.
C-Store up and going and all that. Now we have a place, you know, for
Yeah.
guys to go and get the jumps in and, you know, do the really fun stuff.
so
Yeah.
one of the best things that we do here is we remind ourselves it's time to shut up because we got a guest and you can hear me every week, but you don't get to hear him that much. And
And if you have questions, ask them now.
ask him, but I'm going to turn the floor over to John, but with a little parameter. What aren't we asking you? What's the thing that you want to get out there that we haven't been able to talk about yet?
Well, okay, so to quickly cap this, it's now that I have a bit of information, I should check more into MEFLOQUINE. How do I do that? So
Nice.
again, you go to International MEFLOQUINE Veterans Alliance. That is the website that has the countries, like 5-country alliance that we formed,
Just write it as
that
a
has
column.
all the information that you require to go through to determine, does this affect you? You also go to my Facebook page.
John,
I do
I'm going to
continuous
get you to
posts
slow
for that.
down. International, what was it?
International MEFLOQUINE.
Yep.
International MEFLOQUINE
Yep.
Veterans
Yep.
Alliance.
I got a bad
Okay,
name.
good.
All good. You too, right?
That's
That's a MEFLOQUINE thing,
I
buddy.
always need to write it down.
So now,
After
now,
the show, you look this shit up.
right now, with that, with more learning, now you have a time of discovery where you may be angry that it affects you. So you want to have some action. Talk to your member of parliament. It's the only way. We get enough people to speak to their member of parliament. They can go forward and finally get the public sentiment needed to get some action and to get more voices. We've already had James Bazan in January stand up in Parliament to ask the Liberal government, what's going on with this MEFLOQUINE? We need to ban it outright. There's no response. So it's not like the Liberal government today hasn't heard about this.
Bazan?
But they need to hear more MPs standing up and speaking
Conservative,
for you, which is
critical.
what their job is. So that's how you can take action. There's really no other action that you can take at this point. This is the state of play and this is where we're at today.
Just short of a court case.
Well, hey, that'll be
So-
the worst most likely. But we'll handle that when we get there. Let the legal beagles handle their, you know, their wheelhouse when it gets to their wheelhouse. Right now,
It
we
would
need the
be good.
outreach and get people on board
It
and
gives the government a chance
So-
to fix it.
speaking up.
We've mentioned it twice. I'm going to mention it a third time on how you guys can connect to John. Because like we said, we covered some info here. I've learned a lot. But he knows more than we got time to go over today. So they can find you, and the last name is DOWE. You are on Facebook,
Yes.
and they can communicate
And
to you
Twitter. John Dow on Twitter. You'll find me there as well.
He's tagged on
And the
the
website.
Perfect.
the link to this very video.
All right.
there. So
What is everyone
I'm
running
good.
out of things to say? That's
I'm
fucking
good.
unprecedented.
Blah, 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 blah. There's a lot to take in. You
I
know,
love
and there's
the
a
sound
lot-
of my fucking voice.
There's
Blah,
a lot-
blah, blah, blah.
There's a lot more to this too, by the way. We can't unpack this in the time allotted right now. There is more to this and what people are doing, and so that's why I encourage you to come to the Facebook and catch up with what's been happening.
Absolutely.
recap time. He could have seen us in 48 hours. In fact, he will see us in 48 hours because we're probably going down to Toronto or 72 or whatever. But just to get this out there to you, a couple of days early, he drove his ass up here
All the way to
just
Ottawa
to
from
get it
Toronto
to you a couple of days early. And so here's
to be
where
on the Tuesday.
here's where I throw it back in your direction. So don't let this be the thing that you're going to look into 2 days from now. Because then it'll be 2 months from now, and then you won't, and then you look even fucking older than he does right now. You look great, by the way.
Suicidal ideation is a very major side effect of mefloquine. We get a high rate of suicide.
Don't put this shit off.
Guys are dying every day. I just had a brother the other day die. Rest in peace, Mr. Turcotte.
Yeah,
Just in the last week?
A couple days ago, a few days ago.
I'm
I don't
sorry,
know.
brother.
It's too recent.
don't put it off. Don't put it
Get
off.
this done.
He came up here right on time. Do it on time.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Aren't we doing a push-up thing tomorrow?
I think we are.
Hey, I'll do my push-ups tomorrow.
Shaky, shaky.
I'll get them done tomorrow, Facebook.
Hey, hold on. Tomorrow, in front of the Supreme Court of Canada at 7 o'clock, anyone in the
PM.
Ottawa area,
Ah, yes.
could you please come out? We're doing some push-ups.
1900.
1900.
There you go.
Every veteran able, come on out.
All right.
Does anyone have a last word out there? Anybody? Great show. I know it was a great show.
Of course. I
We're
mean,
getting better and better at this stuff. Come on. See, we have to
Okay.
have a smile.
Cheers, guys.
Despite talking about these hard subjects. We
Yes.
love you all. We'll see you next week. By Friday, we'll give you a little shout out on who's up next on VGR, Veteran Guerrilla Radio. Love you guys.